Well, I got involved in the union because I was asked repeatedly to do little tasks that all built up into big tasks. So the first time with United Academics, before it was United Academics, was an email from Marlene, who was asking if people were interested. And since I had been involved in the union in Portland, the Portland Library had a very small union, and I was treasurer there, so I thought, sure. So I met with Marlene at the office, and she was asking me about my job at the U of O in the PE department, and she'd say, well, how do you do this thing in your department? And I say, well, we do it this way, with some pride. And she'd stop me and she'd go, well, you realize that's really not cool? And I think about it for a second, I go like, oh, you're right, that's not cool. And so over the course of an hour, there was like 5 or 6 of these things where she go, you realize that's really not okay. And I think about it, I go like, oh, so I left the office going, yeah, we really do need a union. We are being exploited. We are being not treated very well. And having been in a unit previously, I understood how a contract works and how it protects people. So the union effort on campus kind of stalled for a certain number of months as I think there was a core group of professors, maybe 5 or 8, I forget how many, but they had been working for like 5 years to get this going. So they went to AFT, got some different organizers to come in, and that's really when things started happening. And my re-involvement, I forget if it was 6 months or a year later, was a young woman came into my class, and at the end of class she said, can I talk to you? And she looked like a student, so I thought she was going to ask me about signing up for my class. Turned out it was Sarah Noms, and she was asking me about doing some tasks for the union. And she's very skilled, and it was all very personable. One of my coworkers happened to be leaving the PE building as Sarah and I were standing on the sidewalk talking, and so Sarah was getting me up to speed on where the union organizing effort was at, and Sean came over and told us how he had been trying to make some positive changes in the department, and when he went to his area director to make some changes, to ask for some changes, he ended up having his FTE cut. So we were, again, protection from retaliation, having a voice, having the protection of solidarity. So that was the term, I think it was fall term of 2010, I'm not sure if the date's right, but that was when we did the poster campaign and got signatures on this big poster. So the goal was to have, I forget, it was 750 or 900 signatures of faculty saying, yes, we want a union. So that was when I started going to my coworkers in my department and saying, hey, would you sign this poster, and talking about union stuff and hearing through the grapevine of who the objectors in our department were, who was saying like, no, union bad, don't sign it. So just kind of starting that organizing process and getting trained myself in how to talk to people. Sarah would go with me, and then she'd say, no, you can do it yourself. So we got the poster done. Excuse me. So after helping with the poster campaign, Sarah kept inviting me to the organizing committee meetings, and I kept saying, I'm too busy, I'm a single parent, I have 3 jobs, I can't make it, I can't make it, I can't make it. So finally it was in the summertime, I believe, when I was able to make it to a meeting. So I sat down, I was a little bit early, sat down, and Wayne was there, Wayne Mansell was there, and so he looks at me and goes, oh, are you on the organizing committee now? I go, I guess so, I'm here. So I just thought I was going to a meeting. I didn't realize that I had been nominated to be in the organizing committee. And I also didn't know till later that Sarah had gone, before she talked to me, she'd gone into my department, spoken to several people, and one of her questions to people in my department was, is there somebody in your department who's really vocal who you think would be a good representative for you? And I didn't know that, but my name had come up several times. And once I found out, I was like, well, okay, yeah, all those staff meetings where I'm like, but what about, did you consider this? I'm like, okay, so I got myself a reputation as the one who will say like, I don't think that's right. Can we do this different? So I was on the organizing committee, and this was my very first organizing committee, and the topic was whether or not to start card check. And I didn't know what card check was, so I asked, and they explained, we're going to take 1,800 eligible faculty, and we're going to get 1,100 of them plus to sign cards saying that yes, they want a union. And I'm like, oh really, that's interesting, because I come from an academic family and trying to get academics to commit to anything like that. I'm like, you're going to do that 1,100 times. You're going to get 1,100 faculty to do this. And I'm like, yeah, we can do it. Well, what's your time frame? About 9 weeks. I'm like, oh really? Okay. So it was my first meeting there, so I was more asking questions and listening, and a couple of people like myself were kind of like, but Wayne was like, yes, we can do it. And then Andu, who was the dean of the music school and was one of the core group, was like, yeah, we can do it, we're ready. I'm like, okay, if you say we're ready, okay, I'll do it. So then it became a very interesting term of, we had Yana Carroll, who was our lead organizer, who's brilliant. She's with AFT Oregon. And we had a staff of, I don't know, 6 or 8 organizers. So we started doing home visits, we started doing office visits. We were easily the core group of faculty who were involved. I think the organizing committee was about 30 faculty. We were spending like 5 to 10 hours a week volunteering, going and talking to other faculty, sending emails. The person who won the award for the most persistent card collection would have to go to Nancy Bray, because she had a coworker who kept saying, yeah, I'll sign, and then wouldn't show. So we're getting toward the end of the 8 weeks when we needed to get most of the cards. Nancy sat in the laundromat on a Saturday afternoon for 3 hours, waiting for her coworker to show up to do laundry, and got the card signed. So Nancy gets the award. And then the other award I would give would be to a core group of tenure track faculty who are on the organizing committee, because the strategy was, being a group of professors, it was all very strategic, to get what Dave Lupke called the low-lying fruit first. So in the first couple of weeks, we got like 500 cards or 700 cards, somewhere around there. So that was pretty easy. We went to all the people who we'd identified from the poster project. We go like, okay, now sign a card, say we want you. So that went pretty quickly, and the organizers were out collecting cards too. So both faculty and organizers were out collecting all these cards. Then it started getting a little harder. So at organizing committee meetings, which we had about once a week, there'd be these huge pieces of paper with the names of all the people who were in the departments who were still needing to get cards signed. And so we'd go, oh yeah, I know that person, or I'm having dinner with that person, or I took a class with that person, or I teach that person. And so it got a little harder, but we're getting it. So we got down to about week 8, I believe, and Carrie Nelson from AAUP came and gave us a pep talk, because we were down to, I think we needed 60% in all categories of tenure track faculty, non-tenure track faculty, and research assistants. And we'd gotten the non-tenure track faculty. We still had some postdoc people to get, but it was pretty close. But the tenure track faculty was where it was getting stuck. And so Carrie flew out to give us this pep talk, because it came down to about 3 or 4 tenure track faculty who were on our organizing committee. And it was up to them to go to their tenure track faculty companions, co-workers, and get cards on this particular weekend. And I remember Carrie saying, give up grading, give up your family life, say goodbye to your children for 3 days, you must get this number of cards. And I remember somebody on the committee saying, well, if we don't get it this term, can't we just do it next term? And Carrie explained how many millions of dollars had gone into this organizing campaign, both from AAUP and from AFT. And he's like, no, it's this weekend. You must give up everything and do this. And so I remember watching my tenure track faculty organizing companions gulp and say, okay. And so those of us who were in the non-tenure track were like, we'll help you, we'll bring you food, we'll bring you, just let us know. But they're like, no, we can do it. So that was like a Thursday, I think, Thursday or Friday. And by Monday, they'd gotten the cards. And then that next week, we had the organizing committee, and Yana was rolling out the charts, because she would bring charts every week of where we're at. And so it was before the meeting, people still sitting down, some of the organizers setting up food at the tables, because we always had food. And so she's unrolling the first chart. It says tenure track, and it said something like 63%. And then she unrolls the non-tenure track, and it said something like 65%. And then she unrolls the research assistant, and said something like 61 or 63%. I was looking at that, and I said to Yana, kind of under my breath, because I didn't want it to be too loud, I said, does that say what I think it says? Because if it said what I thought it said, that meant that we had a union, that we had enough cards. And she was like all beaming. She says, yes, that means what you think it means. I'm like, yay! Of it turns. So that was the meeting when we realized we had enough cards. So fast forward, getting the cards all organized, people taking pictures with their lead organizer with the 1,110 or 15 cards or something. Makes the trip to Salem, United Academics becomes a thing, and we get our picture and the write-ups in the various union newspapers. So then it's summertime, and the university administration challenges our card check, and they decide that the definition of supervisor, which would disqualify a faculty member from being in the union if they supervise somebody, they decided that all but 3 people on campus were supervisors. So they had this strange definition. Basically, if you were a teacher, you were a supervisor, or if you had a grad student, you were a supervisor, or I don't know, basically if you were breathing, you were a supervisor. So. And ironically, one of the 3 people who they identified as being qualified to be in the union was on our organizing committee. So United Academic lawyers meeting with university lawyers over this one particular weekend, and on Sunday there was a big conference call, and I remember I was lying on the floor in my apartment with my legs up on the chair. It was a Sunday afternoon on the conference call, and my boyfriend was there because he was involved in politics and was very interested in what was going on. And so on the conference call, Yana told us what had happened and the negotiations that had been happening, and we'd been getting emails through the weekend, so we're kind of up to speed. But then the lawyer came on for United Academics, and this was just like 30 seconds into the call, and he said, let me just cut to the chase. You have a union. And so on this conference call, 30 people, I go, yay! But I just remember I was lying there on the floor, having my legs up, because I was still a single parent, still working 3 jobs, still volunteering for the union, so it's like my one chance to relax during the week. And in hindsight, it was monumental. It's like we had just, as a group, which the other amazing thing about this particular group was we used a consensus model, and it worked, which is amazing to have a consensus model that works efficiently, and it was really pleasant. I've never had those 3 things together: consensus model, efficiency, and pleasant. So it was a really cool group of people, and we had formed a union. So that was pretty amazing, and my boyfriend almost cried, and I was like, whoa. Yeah, so there's 2 levels of differences that are made. One is I would think would be the more predictable level of, we got salary floors. So being the lowest paid department on campus, just the creation of salary floors was pretty revolutionary. And it's kind of been a mixed blessing, because our department is not as valued by the university. So, and I can back that up with various things, but our department is not as valued by the university. So our funding model for our department is very strange. It's all based on student fees. Therefore, it has to operate on a shoestring. So what some people's fear was before we even got the union was that as salaries were mandated by the contract, that people's FTE would be reduced. And that's what happened for some people based on enrollment. So overall, some of us are getting paid more, but since the floor was so low, we're still collecting food stamps and on Oregon Health Plan, some of us. But for me, really what the big piece was the union work was a way for me to get education and validation and use career skills that I had put on hold when I became a single parent, because I put my kids first. And teaching part-time at the university was a good thing, but there's no career advancement because of the structure of our department and just the corporatization of universities right now. So I spent a lot of time down at the United Academics office on the organizing committee. I was also on the steering committee. Yana would, or Sarah would text me and say, hey, would you come down to the office? We have this question. We'll feed you lunch. And so that happened a couple times a week. And so that was really nice, getting validated for skills that I had. And also through doing the work of the poster, the card check, calling people to show up for bargaining, being vocal, going to rallies in my department, people saw me as being a leader, even more so than I see myself as being a leader. I mean, I show up, I teach, I do a couple hours of volunteer work, but it was, I get the feeling from them that they get strength from seeing me stand up for the union and stand up for faculty. So that's an intangible but very heartening benefit that I've gotten personally, is being able to move into a leadership position and get recognized both from union leaders and from my coworkers that this is really important work to do. My vision for the future for our department specifically is we need to address the funding model, because it's unfair to students. Students get double billed. They pay for tuition to get a credit, and then they pay a self-support fee to run the department. So we being myself and a few other activists in the department and leadership from United Academics and some student government leaders have been talking about ways to form coalitions to work on the bigger issue of tuition being too high, tuition being unfair to students, and then also trying to figure out where the leverage points are in terms of getting out of this trap where if people get raises, their FTE gets cut. And there's some strange things that happen about predictions of future enrollment, because we're told you're not going to have this class 6 months down the road because enrollment is too low. But enrollment hasn't even started yet. And they go, well, we're basing that on last year's prediction. So we're working on that in our department. And just last night I went to a representative assembly meeting, the stewards and the department reps. And it was a definite sea change. When we finally got our contract at the end of bargaining, Michael Dreiling, who's our current president for United Academics, said this is going to be a sea change. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Let's see how that works out. And he was totally right, because it went from kind of feeling like the Polish resistance movement in the beginning, going around and making sure that we were having doors closed when we were talking to people and being very selective, to last night Michael was talking about our union leaders talking with university administration leaders and creating policies, truly shared governance at the highest level for faculty, both tenure track, non-tenure track, and we had an extensive conversation about the postdoctorate people and what their needs were. And it was such a huge change. I just had this image of when we started, it was like this wall, and all the power was on the side of the administration, and then we were over here with faculty, old tenure track faculty, thinking they had power and realizing after Birdall was fired that they didn't. So we're like drilling this little hole in this wall to try to get a trickle of power and respect and some money to come through. And then like last night, it was like the trickle had turned into this big flood, and it really was a sea change, because I was sitting with a whole bunch of new tenure track and non-tenure track faculty who hadn't been involved in the organizing committee, and they were all energized and they were all empowered, and they were talking about work they were doing and truly working with the university to make changes, and some really exciting stuff happening. So it was kind of a relief to be able to sit back and not be on all of the committees, to watch new people coming in and being jazzed up and feeling like the union was theirs and that they could use the union to make the university a better place. So, so the future is looking pretty cool. We got votes, we got seat change.